Episode of the Sea Services Leadership Association's Joint Women's Leadership Virtual Series. We are so glad to have you guys. It has been such an awesome couple of months in getting to do this series, and I can't believe that we are actually on the last one today. So thank you for joining us. First, as always, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Johnson & Johnson, USAA, and Amazon. Without you, we would not have been able to launch this inaugural event. And truly, it has been a pleasure to work with you on this. So those of you joining us today, both on Zoom and on Facebook, we do ask that you put your chat in the chat box. We want to know what your thoughts are. We're going to be putting some polling questions in there for you to answer because we want your participation. As we go along, we are certainly encouraged to put questions in the Q&A box or on Facebook Live, and we will be addressing those later on in the seminar. So our disclaimer is that the views and opinions expressed in this webinar are not endorsed by and do not represent the views of the Sea Services Leadership Association, the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, or any other federal entities, and this session is being recorded. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Corinne Powers with the United States Coast Guard. I am the Sea Services Leadership Association's Vice President of the Board of Directors, and I am also the virtual series co-chair this year. And it has, like I said at the beginning, been an incredible experience to be here and serve with my counterpart here through this inaugural event. And I just literally can't believe that we have done everything that we've done in the last couple of months. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining us today. So Teresa, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Commander Teresa Carpenter. I am in the United States Navy. I'm a prior aviation electrician's mate, then a SWO. Now I'm a PAO in the Navy. But for the Sea Services Leadership Association, I was the former PAO and the co-chair of the virtual series. So I too am so honored that you have joined us throughout these 12 sessions. If you have missed any, please check us out on YouTube, but we'll talk more about that later. What we're here today, though, is to introduce some amazing trailblazer women. And we've got 3 panelists here that I just can't wait to talk to, and I know you will be just as excited as I am. First off, we've got Major Katie Higgins Cook from the U.S. Marine Corps, and she is the first female Blue Angels pilot. She flew KC-130 Juliet aircraft. She also deployed to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, as well as deployment to Africa with Special Purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force Crisis Response in support of contingency operations. Next up, we'll hear a little bit from Rear Admiral Sarah Joyner, and she has a number of amazing accomplishments, including the first female strike pilot to command a Navy fighter squadron. Then she was also a CAG, as well as for Carrier Strike Group 2. And then our last panelist is Colonel Allison Thompson from the U.S. Marine Corps. She was the first female commander of a Marine flying squadron and Marine aircraft group. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn over to all 3 of these amazing women to give a little bit more about their background. And we have 2 questions that we would like for them to address if possible. One is, what does it mean to you to become the first or a groundbreaker in the military? Oh, before that, let me go back. If you go next slide, we actually have some polling questions. So I don't know if I'm going to see the poll on here, but we do have 2 questions for you guys. One is, do you know anyone or have you served with anyone who is a trailblazer in their respective field?
So we have that as a couple of minutes. Definitely lots of posts out there.
And this will also get into the heart of what we consider a trailblazer. And then the second is, do you currently or have you served in aviation? And if so, what field? We'd like to get a feel for some of the people who are on the call today.
All right, so we know some trailblazers. Looks like we have 78% of our audience who knows somebody who was a first or a trailblazer. That's awesome.
And then our second question, do you currently or have you served in aviation? Let's see the results of that, and I'll kind of talk through it for those of you joining us on Facebook. All right, so 44% of the people on this call are in the aviation community. So I think that helps too, to sort of start discussion so we know a little bit of the background of the people who are calling in. But without further ado, like I said, we're going to turn it over to the three amazing panelists. And we was hoping that they could address what it means to be the first or groundbreaker in the military, and why is it important to recognize firsts? What does it mean to your respective communities for that? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Major Cook.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Like she said, my name is Major Katie Cook. I'm originally from Severna Park, Maryland. I attended the United States Naval Academy for undergrad, where I graduated in a BS in political science in 2008. I then continued my education at Georgetown University and graduated with a Master's of Arts in International Security in 2009. I then attended the basic school for the Marine Corps officers and then flight school, where I finally earned my wings of gold in October of 2011. I then reported to Marine Aerial Refueling Transport Squadron 252 out of Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, North Carolina. I pretty quickly deployed to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom as a crew member of the KC-130J Harvest Hercules Armament Weapons Kit, or we also call it the Harvest Hawk. During this deployment, the single Harvest Hawk aircraft employed munitions against the enemy more than all other fixed-wing aircraft combined in the infamous Helmand province. After returning stateside for just 3 months, I deployed again, this time to Africa with the Special Purpose MAGTF Crisis Response in support of contingency operations. And on this deployment, I conducted the evacuation of the U.S. Embassy out of South Sudan in January of 2014. I then joined the U.S. Navy Blue Angels, which is why I'm here today, in September of 2014 as the first female pilot in the history of the famed demonstration squadron. I served as the aviation safety officer, followed by the officer in charge of the C-130, affectionately known as Fat Albert. And during my time with the team, I was featured on several national level media outlets, including Fox and Friends, CBS This Morning, and the Today Show. In February 2017, I reported for duty as the Airfield Operations Company Commander for Marine Wing Support Squadron 271 out of Marine Corps Auxiliary Landing Field, Bogue, North Carolina. And in this billet, 130 Marines and I provided scheduling, fuel, firefighting, and maintenance support for the only expeditionary airfield on the eastern seaboard. During my time in the fleet, I've accumulated more than 1,400 flight hours, 400 of them being in combat. I was recently named one of the 50 most influential alumni of the United States Naval Academy Alumni Association. A little over a year ago, I transitioned the Marine Corps Reserve, and I currently work as a director of sales programs for global public sector at Salesforce. I'm married to another Blue Angel alumni, the former Major Dusty Cook, and we have 3 children, Ranger, Colt, and Scarlet, and a Dalmatian named Rosie. And like I said, I really do appreciate being invited to the panel today. I think it's important to bring attention to first or trailblazers, because I think sometimes it highlights how far behind we are and how much work we still have to go. For example, it took 69 years for the Blue Angels to get a female pilot. Even more astounding, the Navy's first African-American female fighter pilot just earned her wings this year. So we can celebrate female groundbreakers for not only overcoming obstacles that their male counterparts didn't have to face, but because we're also living, breathing examples to other women who may be facing some of these obstacles, so that they know that they're not alone. So at this point, I'll turn that over to Admiral Joyner.
Okay, really great to be here today. I am the oldest member of the panel, so when I say first, I think I feel like a plank holder some days. One of the big things for me is having started, my first squadron, I flew A4s in the Philippines. So that gives you an idea of how long I've been around, since that base has been gone since 1992. And from there, I continued to fly and finally transitioned into Hornets, was able to join my husband, and we flew for 10 years as a F-18 pilots in 2 different squadrons, deploying both Iraq and Afghanistan, OEF. My husband participated in Desert Storm, or the edge of it. I did not. Most of our time was Southern Watch, and then OEF and OIF for many years. Flew both, finally got to be a CO of a fighter squadron off the Truman, which was sort of landed me in the first land of a first strike fighter pilot, carrier based. We go back to Rosemary Mariner, who was a trailblazer on her own in F-18s, but that was a shore-based squadron. So that's sort of what started breaking me out as something new. I was on the leading and bleeding edge of most of the women in the aviation service, and then especially in the tactical aviation, because the laws didn't change until 1993. So with that entry point, I was the CEO of the Gunslingers, and then I was further selected as the carrier, the CAG of the Truman Strike Group as well, Carrier Air Wing 3, where my colloquial name, if you're familiar with that type of thing that we do for the Carrier Air Wing 3, I was Battle Axe, which was funny on many levels. So they did refer to me as Battle Axe, and I think I lived up to the name in many ways, but it was an awfully great experience, and a tremendous amount of fun also to carry a call sign or a nomenclature that meant so much. Went from there, and now I'm an admiral. I'm serving the Pentagon. I'm Chief of Legislative Affairs. I've been the Joint Staff J1. Really, being a first is about not being a first anymore, because what you hope for is that everybody comes behind you, and that it becomes normal, and it becomes something that nobody, when they meet you, goes, "Oh, that's rare," or "That's unusual." What I really want is for people who are, really want to be in the profession to be able to be there, to be relevant, and to be part of a team, and no longer be looked at as something special or different from the rest of the people they're serving with. And it's been my privilege and my honor to keep going forward. But I will say there's an airspace of about a decade behind me that's a little disconcerting of like-minded women in the strike fighter community going in my footsteps. So I look forward to further people being inspired and wanting to do this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Thompson and let her talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Joyner. Excuse me. I apologize for not being able to join you guys on Zoom. I'm calling from the basement of the Pentagon here, so I think there's some slides with some pictures so you can see my smiling face. But yeah, many of some of the same experiences, kind of a hybrid between Katie and the Admiral. I got commissioned in '94 and joined CH-53 squadron, and is just of course a career is a great time to be a CH-53 pilot, a heavy hauler there. So first deployment we did humanitarian operations in Albania, and then we're the entry force into Kosovo when we needed to push Milosevic's folks out of Kosovo, and did some other humanitarian ops in Turkey following a big earthquake, and then went to weapons and tactics instructor school twice in between first and second one, because went the first time, got through all the academics, and then they red stripe grounded all the 53, so got to go back the next year, which was right over 9/11 time period. So I left from weapons and tactics instructor school, joined the ship right as it went through the Suez Canal, and was part of the entry force there into Afghanistan, seized Camp Rhino, worked up in that area, and then over the course of the career went back, or I should say went to Iraq, got the 11-month full meal deal deployment to Iraq, which was neat because I got to work. I was in the Air Group Operations Center, so worked with I think about 32 different squadrons, which was kind of a neat leadership experience for me, just to see all the different types of leaders of the squadrons as they came through, and then went back to Afghanistan, which was kind of neat because 10 years to the date that I initially went in 2001. Now 10 years later, I'm back with my own squadron. Is a hybrid of East Coast and West Coast, 53 folks, but we were there. Left in 2012. Did some various, shore tours, I guess you'd say. Notably, it was the MLA for Senator Elizabeth Dole, and then worked in manpower and programs and resources, and now I'm in programs and policy and operations. So as far as Being a first, yeah, it's one of those things. I'm sure, like everyone, you don't really think of it while you're doing. You're just, trying to do best job you can, put one foot in front of the other. But every once in a while, forums like this come up, and you kind of pop your head around, and kind of in the exact same boat as Admiral Joyner, where, the next person, kind of next female in the chute is a full decade behind as well. She just took command here this fall. So yeah, I think it is important that we just kind of capture lessons learned and support each other, and be a resource for one another, because we all need it at various times. With that, I'll turn it back over to Corinne.
Thank you so much, ladies. Such inspiring stories. So I'm just going to start with a few questions to each of you, sort of just get the ball rolling. Then we'll do some sort of open question and answer to whomever feels like responding. And then we're going to turn it over to anyone who might have questions in the chat. So I'm going to start with Major Cook. We did a little bit of research, and we saw that you're a third-generation military aviator. As you mentioned, you're also married to a fellow Blue Angel. So military service was obviously a big part of your family. Was it that legacy that inspired you to join the service? And what else may have appealed to you about military service, and what keeps you continuing to serve?
Yes, obviously getting that exposure from my grandfathers. Both of them were in the Army Air Corps, and then eventually the Air Force when that came about. And then my father being a Navy pilot for 26 years who knew Admiral Joyner, and they served together. Definitely had a huge influence on my path to pursue aviation. But really, I would say it started much earlier than that. My grandfather's family came from Sweden. And so in his lifetime, he basically took his family from nothing. They came here from nothing to upper middle class because he served, 20 plus years in the military as an officer. And so he really lived the American dream, right? And so he inspired me and my cousins and my brother to give back to a country that had given us so much. And he really instilled this idea of service. And so when I was growing up, I didn't know if I wanted to be a firefighter, a police officer, doctor, even considered the nunnery at one point, but I wanted to have kids, and they tend to frown upon that. And so ultimately I landed on the military as kind of being the path for me. And then once I knew I was going to wear, the nation's cloth, if you will, I knew I wanted to be in the sky, just being kind of growing up around that on Lemoore, and AS Lemoore is where I grew up for the most part. And then what's kept me in the service is this idea of giving back, right? The company that I work for, because I'm a reservist, the company I work for in my civilian career is very much community focused, is very much environmentally focused, and those are the types of values that I still instill in my life, even though I'm not wearing the uniform every single day. But this idea of service and giving back, I couldn't just walk away from the Marine Corps. I needed to at least, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year to get the uniform on. So
that's awesome. And I'm sure that answer resonates with so many of us who are currently serving. So I totally get it. Admiral Joyner, I'm interested in what leadership challenges you faced as the first in your field, both as the first woman to command a strike fighter squadron, and then again as the first female commander of a strike fighter carrier air wing, and then also the carrier strike group. I think that a lot of people don't really understand how to work through some of those challenges, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. But was there anything specifically that you can recall that was challenging as you went on this journey?
I do think one of the big challenges I saw is that a lot of the men that I serve with, when you're the first coming through the chute, they haven't worked with a lot of women. And so there's a lot of uncertainty on their part. And, that sometimes translates into a little bit of trepidation when you first jump in and you're the executive officer or you're the DCAG, and they're trying to size you up to figure out how does this work. It's that beginning uncomfortableness that when you first pop through the chute that you have to overcome. And I think once they see that leadership is leadership, and it comes, there's a face that doesn't necessarily look like the other faces you've seen before, but you're still going to lead under the tenets that they lead under and they live under. And I think once they see that, and that you have a sense of humor helps, because there's a lot of, you can get very self-conscious and then you can't lead like the human that you are. And so you have to overcome yourself a little bit, and you also have to overcome their trepidation as well. And then I had in my squadron, I ended up with like 6 women. And quite honestly, I had never led a lot of women after my composite squadron timeframe. So I had been used to being around men most of the time. So I had a little bit of trepidation about that myself, because I had been surrounded by men most of the time. But, needless to say, you come through the chute, you lead with clarity, you lead with a lot of energy, and you really make it clear about who you are and who you expect them to be, and they respond in kind. And once you get through, I think, that initial hurdle, I think everything sort of flows from there and it works out, and you get into your groove, and then everybody's just a person.
Absolutely. I think that sometimes people think that when you're a woman, you have to lead a certain way, but you got to lead with who you are and your personality and with what you think is right. So that really resonated with me. So thank you. Colonel Thompson, we did a little research about you and your career. We saw that you were a highly desired candidate for multiple service academies as a young woman, including the Coast Guard Academy, Coast Guard right here. But we want to know what most attracted you to the Marine Corps and Marine Corps aviation, and what words of advice would you give to, from your experience, to young women who may be interested in following the same path that you did?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, I think it's funny to say I was highly sought after. The Army, up at the military academy, they said, "Oh, you can come and join us if you go to, what is it, MAPS? Go to prep school." And Naval Academy said, "Oh, yeah, you can come and not have to go to prep school." So I was like, that seems more appealing to me. But you bring up the Coast Guard, and at the time, because combat exclusion still existed, I was absolutely torn. I was about flip of a coin whether to go Coast Guard or go to the Naval Academy. And the Coast Guard really, and still does, I think, is phenomenal service. Kind of every day is actual. And just, I like the mission a lot. And I like the fact, certainly, that there was no limits on what I could do. And I ended up going to Naval Academy. I just, the scale of the different things and the service, and I felt like there was just more venues for me at that time. And I say that not really including the Marine Corps, because I have to assume that I had done my homework enough, trusting in my younger self, that I was aware I could go Marine Corps. I'm certain of that, but it was absolutely not an inkling in my head whatsoever. And I remember my dad, like halfway through the academy, asking me, like, "Oh, are you going to go be a jarhead?" And that movie, A Few Good Men, was out, and I said, "Oh, Jack Nicholson's character is the reason I will never, ever go Marine Corps." And but while I was there, I was learning a lot more about the Marine Corps and learning a lot more about myself as well. And so I really started thinking about the Marine Corps, but I was constrained on what I could do with combat exclusion. I wanted to fly in the Marine Corps because at the time, the other services said you can fly, but you have to fly in non-combatant roles. And the Marine Corps said, well, all of our platforms are combatants, therefore we won't open it up to anyone until we can open it up for everyone. And as luck would have it, in December of '93, Congress lifted combat exclusion, and like 3 weeks later was when I had to service select. So for the first time ever, Marine aviation was open to females. So myself and now Tracy Benjamin at the time, selected Marine Air out of the academy. And I was certainly, I was afraid. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be really hard. What am I getting myself into? And I thought, well, being in that environment as I perceived it at the time would push me to be my very best every day. And I thought, well, that sounds good, because a lot of times self-motivation, you run into some hiccups and you procrastinate or you come up with good reasons. So I thought, it'd be good to have external factor kicking me in the butt every day to be to be my best. So went that route, and certainly don't regret it. And I remember I was at the Airborne Training Unit at the Naval Academy there, and I remember there was a major there who, especially in this times, would have it was an African American, and that seemed like the norm to me then, because that was who I knew was the Marine major. And he said, if you can hump your pack, you're good to go. And that's so true. I feel like competency and just being good at what you do, not anything superhero, but just being very competent and always striving gets you where you need to go, regardless probably of any service, any job. And now as time has gone on, certainly being able to hump your pack literally in the Marine Corps as we open up infantry and some of these different MOSs, and it depends on the service. There's certainly new groundbreaking areas, subs in the Navy, but being able to hump your pack, be competent at your job, then there is no limit. I'll pause there since I can't see anyone and turn it back over.
Oh, sure. So this actually leads into one of our open answer questions, and I'll turn this one over to Admiral Joyner or Major Cook, and that is it kind of ties into what you said. What do you believe are the most important traits or themes that make for the most successful leaders in today's military? And this is regardless of gender.
Okay, I'll lead it. I'll let Katie take it over the top, since she's definitely been the most recent in the hot seat, I think. One of the things that I always tell people is, don't quit before you start. That's one of the things. I see a lot of people quit before they start. They go, well, I can't do that. That somebody else could do that, or you can do that. And I think it's really important that you don't downplay yourself. And I see a lot of women who do that. They say, well, I can't do that. That's not going to work. I think also is that your self-talk is important. A lot of people, I think, do downplay their capabilities, and then it's okay not to be good at something. So I think a lot of people run into their first stumble and they're like, well, I'm not good enough. So they bow out. And I've had a lot of people help me along the way, and learning to ask for help and receiving that help, and then realizing that, there's a lot of hard work that comes along with things that you're good at. It doesn't always come naturally. So people tend to look and go, well, it's got to be a gift, or it's got to arrive right away. It doesn't necessarily. And one of the first things I ran into was trying to land on an aircraft carrier at night. And, I had been flying for years, and now I go out to the aircraft carrier the first time at night. Everybody's told me a horror story about how bad it was, and it was pretty bad. And I wasn't very good at it. And it, literally, there's two ways to go. You either quit or you just try to do more of it. So what I did is every chance I got, I would go out for the night hop. And if I could get multiple night landings, which is insane, I would sign myself up for multiple night landings, and it became normal, and it became something that I was really good at. But it didn't come in the beginning, and I had to bear with myself, because your own inner self-talk is very difficult sometimes, and you have to overcome that. And then you have to be willing to be a bit humble and ask for that help. Now I'll turn it over to Katie.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, I would say that anytime somebody kind of asks me about this, I've seen like 3 major themes, and those people who have seen me give these talks before, I kind of go over these same 3 themes, which is motivation, minutia, and mistakes. So motivation, people who are motivated by something greater than themselves tend to be happier, more successful. So what I mean by that is whether that's serving your country, or giving back to your faith-based group, or taking care of your family, whatever it is, as long as you have a motivation of something greater than yourself, I feel like those tend to be a little bit more successful, happier people. Minutia, because I wanted to keep with the M theme, minutia is actually attention to detail, right? And so focusing on the small stuff, looking at the, I'm sorry, I have a newborn. I'm sorry if you can hear her in the background. I'm on maternity leave. And so But so my second M is minutia, like I was saying, so attention to detail. So if you can come to work with your boots shined and your hair cut and your mustache is in regs and your emails are formatted properly, you're on time, all that stuff shows that you have all of these little things on lock, and you can be entrusted with further responsibility. You can be promoted. You can be put forward to take a little bit more leadership role or something like that. And so I see successful people also have attention to detail on a very kind of extreme scale sometimes. And then mistakes, and this is kind of going to what the Admiral was saying, is you need to be willing to acknowledge the things that you're not very good at by doing some introspection. And that comes a lot in aviation, right? Doing debriefs and stuff like that. But you shouldn't rely on your wingman or someone else on your crew to call you out. You need to be able to look internally and say, I messed this up, I screwed this up, I need to do better. And that goes to your personal life and your professional life. And so everybody wants to be awesome, but you'll never be awesome until you look at the things that you need to improve. And I think that's really what sets aside maybe those that have a pride issue or an egotistical issue from those that want to be the best and want to succeed and want to be successful. So yeah, my motivation, minutia, and mistakes.
Awesome. I love it. The 3 M's. That's really something I'm going to take with me. So thanks for sharing that, Katie. This is over to Colonel Thompson. And I think that a lot of people have this question with any very successful woman in the military. And so I want to address it. And I know a lot of people have concerns about it. And so what I want to know is, how have you balanced being such a successful woman in the military? And I think this is for men too, with also having a work-life balance, whether that be your kids, any of your outside family, whatever that may be. That doesn't just mean having children. It just means, how do you balance being at the top of your game in your career, but then still making time for your family or for your outside activities, your volunteer work, or what have you? Oh. Colonel Thompson, can you hear us?
Do you have me now?
Yes. Did you get the question I just asked?
Yeah, I sure did. The mute button was kicking me arse. So, copy all. Yeah, no, and this question, over the years, I've heard, lots of different folks talk about it, and I think work-life balance is something that ebbs and flows as you go through your career, depending on your work and depending on your personal life. I know Lieutenant General Reynolds in the Marine Corps, she'll say it's not work if you love it, and I think that's very true too. It's what energizes you, and certainly family energizes us, and at the same time sometimes it can be a pull. As I look around the office here and I see folks trying to struggle with lack of daycare because of COVID and doing all those different things. But I think you just need to keep that balance between what energizes you and keeps you fired up and keeps you content in terms of, feeling like you're being the person that you want to be. And I appreciate bringing this up because we talked a little bit during the rehearsal, because for me personally, it was a huge thing as I went through my career. I doing all the things as a young junior officer leading into field grade, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, met this girl, and got married to now my wife. And I don't know if you guys saw that in the pictures. And for me, oh my gosh, this was a huge thing for me. And this gets to what the Admiral was talking about with self-talk, because I was like, oh my gosh, not only am I a unicorn, my joke is I'm an effing rainbow unicorn, and so in my mind, I blew this up as this huge thing, like, oh my gosh, especially where by that point I was, senior major, and I knew all these all the guys I'd been in the squadron with forever, and I thought everyone would look at me differently and whatnot. And, I'm not so naive to say it was a complete nothing burger. I'm sure, that there's different things, but overall, it's not been a problem whatsoever. And my wife and I go to all the same awkward, mandatory fun events and do all the same things that everyone else does. And, when I was in MAG command, it was just good. Yeah, she's sitting there. So certainly been supportive for me, and doing military too. She just retired last year from the Navy, so we can speak to that. We were opposite coasts for a long time, and deployments in between. So it is hard. So I'll just say overall, just be cognizant of what those things are that give you energy and strength, and that changes over time. So constantly be evaluating, reevaluating. Certainly getting in some some PT, some physical exercise helps cage you. Just getting some downtime, or sometimes just plowing through and asking for your family to understand why you need to put in those extra hours, because it gets you through that thing that you really care about at work. So I will pause here and turn it over, because I'm sure the Admiral and Kate have a lot of thoughts on these, the subject too, as you guys struggle with your families and raising children. Over.
Katie, you want to talk first since you got the newborn?
Sure thing, ma'am. So definitely echo everything that the Colonel said for sure. I think another thing that I really struggled with, because my first two, I have a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn now. So when I had my boys, I was actually a company commander. So it was my most demanding assignment at the time. And I really had to rely on the idea of compartmentalization, right? And so when I was at work, I had to give my Marines all of me, right? And I had to put, even if I had like a sick kid at home or something like that, I had to give the Marines my attention. I couldn't give them half-assed, I've got better things to do, because that's not leadership, right? And then when I was at home, you get those phone calls at 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning, someone's arrested, there's a DUI, something like that. And you obviously have to deal with those. But when my children were awake, I made sure that even though I don't have a lot of quantity of time, the quality of time was focused on them, right? I made them my priority while they were awake. And so, I think that's also true in combat, right? When you're getting into that airplane, especially for me, when I had another pilot in there, I had a crew master or crew chief, I had load masters in the back, sometimes I had fire control officers. So it's not only my life that's on the line, right? It's everybody else's in that airplane, and it's the people on the ground that you're protecting too, their life. And so if you come into that cockpit with like, oh, I'm going through a divorce, and that's all you're thinking about, or I miss my family at home, and that's all you're thinking about, like your mind isn't caged to the mission at hand right there, and you're putting people at risk. So you need to, I would always close the plane door, right? And the only thing that was in my mind was what was in that cockpit and what was in that airplane, right? And then when I got out, I could debrief, and then I could focus on my other problems. So I think compartmentalization and making sure that you can put up that wall sometimes, and focus at the task at hand, even though you have competing priorities, can be, really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. Admiral Joyner, did you have anything to add before I ask the next question?
I'll try to answer really fast. I'd say, just to add on to what everybody said, is your battle buddy is really important. So whoever your partner is in life, especially, when you bring kids into the middle of the mix, being able to compartmentalize, having the right person that is sort of holding down the fort while you're gone. And my husband, for me, has been that battle buddy out there that, I knew he could handle it. I knew it was going to be hard. The other thing I would say is, it is important that you show people behind you that the military isn't an all or nothing thing for family, is that it is possible to do both. And if you're doing hard all the time, then everybody behind you sees something that's too hard. And so sometimes I look at the decade behind me. Well, I spent 10 years with no kids, and my husband and I were chasing around, flying our jets many places in many different countries. And then after that, we started a family. And I think today, with the pandemic, in particular with COVID, is that I am a better leader because I understand where they are. You talk about leading, you want to lead by example. well, I've had to walk in their shoes, and I know how hard it would be right now to not have support at home, you know, in the middle of this, and to be asked to go do things knowing that your family may be at risk. So I think in all, I would say you're a better leader if you're trying to balance all these things and you understand it better. And while things can be really hard, and sometimes they have to be, because, you know, just like Kay said, is you've got to do your job and you got to compartmentalize. It's also that understanding of when your people are stressed too much and how to help them out along the way. So I think there's a lot of goodness to doing work-life balance and figuring this out, so others can follow and you can lead in that respect as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm going to shift gears a little bit to an issue that is near and dear to my heart, and that is, it sounds negative, but I'm going to switch it around and turn it into a positive. It's the subject of toxic leadership. And that was actually our most popular virtual series presentation. Is we had a doctor come in, a scholar who, Admiral Hamby, who had given a presentation about toxic leadership and some of her key insights of what people do when faced with a toxic leader. And they got us on this path of, you guys all made it to the top of your game, and you've had to have come across people that you had a philosophical disagreement with, or a miscommunication, or there was just some sort of a negative atmosphere. And I would love to hear from your perspective how you navigated through that, because nobody, I feel, gets through their professional life unscathed from this issue. So over to you three on this question. I know it's a little bit of a hard question, but I think it's important for people to understand what they can do when they're faced with an issue like this.
I'll lead it off, since it's a tough question. I've run across toxic leadership. I have experienced it. I've had to battle my way through it. At times it makes you just not want to be there at all. And but what I always did is I always looked at those below me and said, if I leave, then what are they left with? What are they left with behind me? And how do I translate what is this leader's vision, albeit maybe given in a way that's not constructive and maybe not supportive? And can I take that, and can I translate that down to them into something that makes us a better place? And then for them, if I always felt like if I left, maybe somebody thinks I'm toxic and that'd be terrible, but if I left, who would be there that they look up to? If all the people that you want to go serve for leave, then what are you left with at the end? So I always said, don't let a bad day, a bad boss, a bad event scare you out of what you love. Because one thing for sure about the military is your bosses don't last forever. And there's something to be learned from every single one of them. Every single tough situation I was put in, I learned, I grew, I came out of it, and I was able to translate that into something that was more constructive, that I learned more about myself, and tried to put it into terms of what could I pull out of this that is truly useful in really other situations I ran into. So that maybe it's a Pollyanna view, but I always tried to find something that was good. And sometimes my boss was right, even when I didn't like it. And so I also had to learn a few things, because maybe it wasn't as toxic as I was unaccepting. So there's that happy medium in between. And you have to battle your way through it, but please, I'd ask anything is don't leave the service because of one person. If you love the service, you're the person to make it a better place.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's the right attitude to have. It doesn't always, you don't always have that attitude at the moment, but I think hindsight's 20/20, and you can look back on that and see where you could do something, you could have done something differently, or what you learned from that leader. So thank you so much for that answer. Major Cook or Colonel Thompson, do you have anything to add on that? Anything from your experiences?
I can jump in really quick. So I would say that I still struggle with this. I absolutely had some COs for sure that were so toxic that, not only impacted my view of the service, but they impacted my mental health. It was that bad, you know, at some points. And I think that's not uncommon. Even to this day, recently this year, I was going to do a talk somewhere, and one of my old COs who controlled the money squashed me being able to come and give a talk because he still holds a grudge against me. So it doesn't necessarily end when you leave the command, unfortunately, because the sea service is a relatively small community, if you will. But I would say the way that I got through it at the time was a phenomenal mentorship from women who were of higher rank than me. Admiral Peggy Klein was one that was very close to my family and to me, and that I reached out to for guidance. Not saying that you have to have female-only mentors. I absolutely had male mentors as well. But when it comes to certain issues, I think it's unique, right? That the women have a different kind of point of view, and that's why we have these leadership conferences like this. And so I think I can't stress enough that if you are a woman in the sea service and you don't have a female mentor in your repertoire, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And so I definitely encourage that for sure.
And Colonel Thompson, did you have anything else to add before we ask the next question?
Just kind of briefly, and it kind of ties to what the Admiral had said earlier in terms of, challenges when you take command. Sometimes, I guess my head's going down two different thoughts, but I would sum them both up with in time. And I try to keep that in mind for many different scenarios. When you're stepping into a new command or you're meeting a different group of players for the first time, you kind of immediately wanted to know each other, and then people, thankfully it is a small sea service and professional reputations carry with you. But especially when I took command in combat, there was this, and maybe it was my own self-talk, but I felt like there was a perception of like, oh, well, she's not a real meat eater. And, you kind of have this feeling like you need to prove yourself. And I think it's always important just to kind of stay your course. And like the Admiral was saying earlier of, leadership is leadership. And so in time, people will realize that whatever misperceptions that they had one way or the other, will kind of go away. You don't have to actively disprove every misperception that you perceive there is. Like in time, just stay the course, focus on the mission, focus on your Marines and sailors, and in time, things will work out. And I think kind of the flip side of that is true with toxic leadership and or toxic climates, because I certainly have experienced that, and it was extremely challenging. For me, I was able to kind of look to my left and right and up and say, all right, for everyone that I would consider this toxic, there are seniors and peers who are actively doing things opposite, and who I appreciate what they do and want to emulate them as well. So I think that's just kind of the flip side of in time relative to toxic leadership. But I'll pause there. Back over to you.
No, I think that's great advice, and that's something that I think we all can take on board and do in our day-to-day careers. So switching it a little bit over to a more positive topic, what is it that you have hope for the future of women in the military or women in aviation? What are some of the signs of progress? I'll start with you, Major Cook, that you see coming up, and where do you see sort of the discussion of women in the services as you look ahead?
Yeah, I think this goes what the Admiral said earlier, right? It's when we finally reach true equality is when we don't have to have these first, and we're not celebrating first because we're just normal like everybody else, right? And I think that would be when we finally reach where all of us are aiming to be. I don't foresee that happening in my lifetime, unfortunately, but I think we could get there with effort and events like this. I think, you know, every person who is a first or a trailblazer is just a stepping stone towards the future. There are women giants, 2 of them on this call, that I stood on their shoulders to get where I was, and there are going to people that are going to use my accomplishments to get even further than me. And that's the main goal, right? I don't want to be end game. I want to be the very first stone that someone can use to continue on. I want to see a boss of the Blue Angels that's a woman someday, right? I don't just want another pilot. I want all of them. Let's have a 6 ship that's all women, right? That would be awesome. And so that's the thing. I think the future is I'd love to see someone expand on my accomplishments. That would mean that I made a difference in somebody's life and that they're using that for good to advance it for the next generation of women.
And I'm going to turn this over to both Admiral Joyner and Colonel Thompson, because I think all of you have your own unique perspectives on sort of the future and where you see this conversation going. So over to you, Admiral Joyner.
So there's some great things afoot. So if you think about 100 years ago, we got the right to vote. And while 100 years seems like a long time, it's really not that long. So 1993, we got the chance to serve in aviation and combat. And just recently, they opened up all combat specialties to women. And I think we're just on the ground floor of what, you know, the future holds. I think, you know, if somebody told you today you couldn't vote, you'd be like, what? You know, if I told my kids you couldn't vote 100 years ago, you know, my daughter knows that, but they still scratch their heads and go, what are you talking about? I couldn't own property, you know? So I think, you know, as we move forward, I think that this is just going to continue to be what is normal. And we're going to get the people who want to serve. That's what I'm looking for, is the best and brightest come and serve in any capacity that you want to and you can. And yeah, I think I see, like I just had a guy in my office, he had a baby. I made sure he took paternity leave, because if you want to have normal, then men and women need to help out normally within the household. And they both need to have that expectation that this is what you should do. You know, and I think, you know, as we see this, so we see paternity leave, we see things that allow women to have, you know, more time to get their head back in the game before they're forced to go back to work. So they're, you know, you have 3 months now with your child, so you're not leaving a tiny baby with somebody. So then when you do go back to work, you can concentrate and you're not worried. So all these things, you know, you start seeing, I see a future that has more involvement in special forces. I mean, you need special forces that look like a diverse population, and that includes women. And so I think we will see in the near future that you're going to see more women serving in that capacity. And it's just, nobody likes to hear about it, but it takes some time for normal to become normal. And so we need to get some time and some numbers in place to make it normal. But I do ask that you encourage young women behind you to get out. You need to get out and recruit. You need to get out and talk. You need to show them that this is something they can do, or else there's not going to be anybody behind us. And I just found out while we're on this phone call that my daughter got accepted into NROTC at Virginia Tech. So she's in the process of applying and trying to follow behind me. So it's a really exciting day in our household. But you know, we're doing the next generation, and the people that you know that are serving right now can turn around and make that next generation and make sure that they know that this is possible. And so, you know, I really see that the new normal is coming right around the corner, but we just got to keep pushing at it, and we got to keep talking about it and going out and showing people it's possible. So thanks for the opportunity to always, you know, certainly listening to Katie and Allison talk about what they do. I mean, I pull stuff in all the time. You're never too old to learn new tricks. So I'm taking notes as they talk, and really appreciate the opportunity to participate in the forum as well.
Thank you so much, Admiral Joyner. That's so inspiring. And you're just reminding me every time someone asks me about the Navy or wants to have a talk about the public affairs community, I always try to give them a little bit of time, because I do believe that's our role. Is as we get older and move on, it's our role to pass down the experiences that we've had and what an amazing opportunity serving in the military truly is. Thompson, did you have anything to add as you're looking forward of what's to come and your hopes for the future?
Yeah, just dovetailing on everything that was said there. I just, yeah, I hope, yeah, I guess my hope is that we try to extract, and that sounds opportunistic, but that we appreciate everyone for what they bring to the table and not whether or not they fit into some ideal. You know, certainly within the Marine Corps, you know, the image of what a warfighter looks like, and that if you don't fit in that because, you know, whether your gender or just your size or anything else, that you get discounted. And we simply can't afford that as a nation, to kind of just subtly discount folks because they don't fit whatever the mold is that we anticipate. And, you know, so I look, you know, at aviation, and certainly we've got lots of strides we've come very, very far, but we still have a long ways to go. And, you know, I hear you, Admiral Joyner. I think being able to get out and just show young ladies, like, hey, if this wasn't ever presented to you as an option of what you can do in your life, consider it. And if you decide against it, great. But then hopefully that leads you to the next thing of, you know, being, I don't know, whatever you want to be, you know. And so I think that's important, because I look at, you know, a good friend of mine who's now we call him Stratcom Vice PAO, but she's the smallest Marine Corps officer ever commissioned. And so you get a big infantry Marine, and they see PAO and super tiny female, and they're just like, talk to the hand. She has tremendous ideas that have moved the Marine Corps forward in our messaging, and you know, and I think with that, attracting different talent. And so I use that as an example of trailblazers who come in all shapes and sizes. So whether it's aviation or any other field, I hope that we can just recognize the talent and what people bring, independent of what our mental image is. Over.
Awesome. And that, you know, it's so funny, Colonel Thompson, that just led into why we had that poll question for everyone about whether or not you know a trailblazer, because a trailblazer isn't just the first who grabs all the headlines. It can be somebody in an organization who has a different idea, a different way of thinking, or who does something in a different way or approaches a project with a new idea. Because we think that every single one of you on the call today can be a trailblazer in their own respective fields and areas. So that's what we're hoping to inspire today with these amazing panelists. And with that, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with all of you. And I'm going to turn you over to the capable hands of my co-chair, Corinne.
As Teresa said, thank you, ladies, for taking the time today. It has been a true pleasure to even just get to be here and listen to you and have the conversation with Teresa. So, you know, the main reason why we do this is to engage our SSLA members, but to also do our outreach. You know, part of our mission is of military women and getting you the exposure to women like our panelists today. So many benefits into becoming an SSLA member. And if you're interested, I encourage you to visit our website. We are continuing to develop new opportunities for our SSLA members. We do have our private Facebook group that we are doing some conversation forums right now with folks across the military services. We have our own private book club and lots of opportunities to get involved. We have elections every year, and in order to actually serve on the board, you do have to be a serving member or an active member of SSLA. So plenty of opportunities, and we look forward to you joining us in this next year. As always, you can follow us on our social media platforms. This conversation will also be loaded on those as well as YouTube today. Please visit our Facebook, our LinkedIn, Twitter, and our Instagram to see what we're doing over the next couple of months.
And check out all of our virtual series presentations on our virtual series tab on our website. You guys, right there, you will see every single one of these has been recorded and archived.
Okay. So obviously we are getting ready for 2021, which we know is going to be a much more awesome year than 2020. But one of the things that we are definitely looking for is the JWLS 2021 here in Norfolk, Virginia, where Teresa and I are. We've got it planned for the 31st of August through September 2nd, downtown Norfolk Waterside Marriott. So more information will be coming out soon, and we certainly hope to get to see all of you in person there. As always, thank you for allowing us to fulfill our mission as SSLA. Like Teresa and I have shared multiple times, this series came out of a challenge with COVID, and we're so grateful to have had the opportunity to outreach to all of you in this new platform. And it's definitely something that we as an organization are going to continue to look at because of the response and the things that you guys have told us and gaining the benefit from it. So.
Yep, y'all forced us to go virtual, or COVID did, and it's been a wonderful thing. So thank you. Thank you to all of our guests who were on the previous virtual series with us. It's been an awesome, awesome honor to be able to do this and to bring this to you, even in such a crazy world at the moment.
Thank you to Teresa for being my co-chair.
And thank you to Corinne for being my co-chair.
So thank you guys. Please stay safe, spread kindness, and have a great holiday season.
Bye.